Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. So I am going to be in conversation with Kent. So we're just going to kind of have an informal discussion, talk about Kent's book, and hopefully have a little bit of fun. And this is always kind of the awkward part for me. So I have to introduce myself. I did this earlier, and it felt kind of weird. And I read about myself in the third person, so it is what it is, you know. So it'll be slightly weird, but whatever. So I'm David Armand, and my bio reads: a recipient of the 2022 Louisiana Writer Award. David Armand was born and raised in Louisiana. From 2017 to 2019, he served as writer-in-residence at Southeastern Louisiana University, where he is currently assistant professor of creative writing. An award-winning author, Armand has published 4 novels, 3 collections of poetry, and a memoir, a collection of essays, Mirrors, which was published by the University of Louisiana at Lafayette Press in 2023. And then this little footnote on here I thought was interesting, so I'll just read this because I was surprised to see this. David Armand's appearance was made possible in part by a strategic partnership grant from the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities.
Thank you,
that means. So
LEH.
that's great, yeah. And then my good friend Kent is the author of The New Inheritors, SECESSIA, and The Blood of Heaven. He was born in New Orleans, raised in Pensacola, and currently lives in Norfolk, Virginia, where he directs the creative writing program at Old Dominion University. And so thank you for...
Of course, thank y'all for being here.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
You have your...
Yeah, I'm trying to stack
I'll
them
do mine too.
We'll stay in between.
And this hopefully explains the matching pink shirts we color coordinated to match the beautiful cover, which is actually the first thing that I wanted to kind of talk to you about, because you know the whole cliche is always don't judge a book by its cover, but the truth of the matter is that people always judge books by their cover, you know. And if you see a really cool cover like this in a bookstore, you're more likely to pick it up, I think, you know. And so that's not to say that a book with a terribly designed cover isn't great, because often they are, but this was an incredible cover, and we were talking about this last night. And you said it was your favorite of all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to be mean. The other ones, like, I love the other ones, and they all fit. Each book is kind of in a different genre. It's supposed to be whatever genre works best for the time period that the book's set in. And since this one is a near future, pre-apocalyptic, wild gunslinging situation, you know, we wanted it to look like a paper. We wanted to print it as a paperback, number one, but for it to look like a mass market paperback and look like a vintage paperback, because that's the style that it's built on. But yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. Like when I got the cover in the email, like I pulled the car off the side of the road and was like dancing around on the highway. And actually might have been in Louisiana, honestly, because we were here visiting. So it's probably I-10. But yeah, so the cover's by an artist named Jeff Miller, who's out of Seattle, and he did most of this himself. Like, it's a collage. Like, the hand is from a photograph, the pistol he might have cut, the Florida outline he cut himself, the typeface I think is hand drawn too. But the figure here, who, you know, for the purposes of the book and for selling the book, it's a representation of the character, the governor, which also feels really entertaining to just say that word up in here. But anyway, and she's part prophet, part machine, and all kinds of interesting. But anyway, this person on the cover here, like, she's real, like, is a real lady, and she's still alive. The image is taken from an ad, or for ads and for these matchbooks from England in the late 1960s, the Cornish Matchbook Company. And the heir to the Cornish matchbook fortune did quite well for himself and married a Dutch, I believe she's Dutch, model. and she moved to England and became the mascot for cowgirl matches. So she would dress up all black with a cowboy hat and, you know, go to different places and like swing in London and be Samantha, the cowgirl. And they had a contest, write a Western novel, you win a date with Samantha. So that, which was really great, like discovering all of it. Once I got the image, I'm a researcher, I love to research and look things up. So I was like, I gotta find where this image came from. And so not only finding that she is still alive and is one of the world's premier, I've forgotten the Latin word for matchbook expert or matchbook collector, but she is it. She's in her 80s now. And beyond that, her name is Rosemary, and that's my daughter's name too. That really tickled me. But yeah, it's the cover of my life. And I'm, you know, beyond grateful too, because it gave me an excuse to wear pink for like a year and a half, and I'm still doing. So I love it. Like, I get to let that pop, but no, it's as good as it gets. Though now I have to like, normally I feel like, well, my book will live up to the cover. It'll do the thing. But with this one's like, okay, it doggone better live up to the cover. But I think it does.
Yeah, so I guess that's sort of like the con of having a great cover is you know, the cover's so great.
Someone goes to
book
it.
Live up to this great
This is the
cover.
thing.
Yeah.
This is why I'm glad it starts fast, weird, and violent. So, and I think the cover promises that.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing you mentioned, Rosemary, I was, as a dad myself, was very touched. You know, so I read the book, and then I get to the end, and you know, in your acknowledgement section, the last part reads, "And finally, my daughter Rosemary, who said I should write a book about cowboys and a girl with a robot arm." And you know, and most people always ask, like, what's your inspiration? And that is just the sweetest thing in the world. Like, you know, your daughter commissioned a book for me pretty much. And it's such a strange concept to write about, but it's like so fitting for a kid to propose that. Like, Daddy, write a book about a cowboy with a robot arm, and then you did it. And that's
Well, she saw me, so there's another version of this book, and there's another version of every single book that I've written, and because I don't just draft, I draft poorly, maybe, or weird, where like I throw out a lot, like I throw out a ton of material, and it's usually a version of the book that's really, really different than what I end up with, whether it's point of view, or length, or scope of it, or something. And in this case, from when I was with you at Southeastern, so 2015 forward, from 2015 to 2022, I worked on this book. But what I wrote was a 500-600 page, grim, serious, realistic depiction of a small civil war breaking out in the panhandle of Florida and across here to Baton Rouge. And it had multiple characters and points of view, and it was just it is what it was, but it was a bummer, as that would be, you know, presented realistically. And what I was thinking about was a bummer, like thinking about what was happening then. And I wrote this book and kept trying to chase what was coming next. And I would write a couple of chapters, and then it would happen. Some version of the event would occur in reality. And that kind of felt horrible in a lot of ways. Not that I'm really thinking I'm conjuring it, but that I kind of was like figuring out that I'm writing what's right in front of my face, that I'm not doing a lot of creating. But I pushed through, sent the book to the editors, and they were very diplomatic. They were like, okay, here's what we have, and here are our notes, and this is how we make this thing more compelling, like you do with any book. And I got my email back from them, and I was sitting at my desk, and my desk was in the middle of the living room in an apartment. I live in a little bitty apartment in Norfolk, Virginia. And I had all this stuff, both my books I use for research, whatever books I'm reading to get all excited to write for the day, and then all of my other like passions. And one of my passions is mass market paperbacks and pulp fiction. and comic books and anime and manga and weird, wild, direct-to-video action movies from the 90s. I grew up watching Rhonda Shear and USA Up All Night. Rhonda's in the book. Shout out to a great Louisianian. But anyway, like, all this stuff is everywhere. It's all over the wall. It's all over my desk. But it wasn't in the book. And I was kind of getting miserable going back to the desk every day. And you know this, and when you go to the desk and you're a worthwhile parent, it's not a relief. Like, so maybe a relief to get your work done, but it's a strain to be away from your kid. Because you know, like, I'm sitting here playing with my imaginary friends, I should be playing with them and their imaginary friends. So I wasn't having a lot of fun going to the desk. And I was kind of surrounding myself with more and more of this stuff in order to make it fun. Like, okay, well, I'm going to do my work, do my edits, and then I'm going to check this out or think about this movie or look at this book. And I got down out of the desk, and Rosemary was playing with magnetiles. we sat on the rug about a foot away from the desk, and one of the images that I had up there on my desk was this panel from a Japanese comic, and it's a cybernetic arm, but it was carved in a 19th century style, like a 19th century pistol. And a lot of the covers of those old pulp books, they look like this, and they have people who look very much like Samantha does here. And I think I must have been complaining or must have been talking frustration about writing. Is we talk about it, and she'll ask me stuff, and we're just playing with blocks. I'm stacking the blocks, and she looks over my shoulder, and it's like, well, why don't you just write about that stuff? Why don't you write about cowboys? And I probably had a copy of True Grit, or some, another Western sitting there, or a spaghetti Western DVD cover, and a girl with a robot arm. And it's just like, and I had these characters, these people who would become much more exaggerated, wild versions of who they were in the original draft. And just write about cowboys and a girl with a robot arm. Yeah. I said, oh, Jesus Christ, you're right. Because we're not to lay a bunch of meaning on what she said, but saying, like, if you write the things that you're passionate about, and I had forgotten that in a search to be serious, in a search to be taken seriously. And I've done a lot of, and this is serious work. It's, it's emotional and I hope a little moving in places. But it's not self-serious. It's not taking itself seriously. It's supposed to be the mass market paperback novel that the characters in my other hardcover books would read when they're on vacation. And that was the other bit where, thinking about the inspiration for this book and what it became, the thing that I kept noticing as I tried to write strict realism, grim realism about the present / near future, was that it didn't resemble reality. It didn't resemble a serious prestige film, let's say, or a prestige novel, an upmarket novel. What it seemed like was a direct-to-video action movie. It seemed like Cherry 2000. It seemed like something that Jim Wynorski or another kind of director like that, or a writer, start doing writer names too much, but the writers of garish mass market paperbacks would write. This is the universe that they would imagine. Now, it's like obviously super influenced by people like William Gibson and Joanna Russ, who are like really serious writers, though they are often classed not so because they write science fiction, but they're among the best and serious for me. And so like it all kind of came together, and like, oh, now it makes sense. And like if I write it like this and I push the wildness as much as I want, then it might not only work, but I'm going to be happy when I sit down at the desk. I'm going to be pleased. But there was also the impression, I got to say, like in the depths of, or the tail end of the pandemic, and publishing changed a whole lot. I hadn't had a book out in 5 years, 6 years, and you get the sense of like, okay, man, this could be the last shot. This could be your last time out. And then you see AI breathing down your neck. And on one level, I kind of, if I'm one of the last human writers, then good for us, right? Like, well, our gravestones will be really polished. But But on the other hand, it makes you feel like there's an end coming. And for me, I was like, okay, well, if I go down, I'm going to go down as myself. I want to go down as me as possible. Where if somebody wanted to scrape the DNA, my DNA, out of this book, they would be able to reconstruct the person that I am. And I don't know what that says about me or the book, but then that became the mission, and it went really, really fast. And then I was able to get it out there and done, and the reception from the publisher was a whole lot more excited. It's been a good run since.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like what you're saying too. Is, I mean, not that you didn't necessarily have fun writing the previous books, but this one, it sounds like you were just having a good
I was
time
having a
writing.
I couldn't believe. Well, it was like every day I could not believe I was getting to get away with it.
Yeah.
And then I would go like, they're not going to let me. They're not going to let me do this. They're not going to let me have my nefarious politician with a brain-eating virus in his head, which sadly ended up being real. But on and on and on. That's one I kept from the other version, and then it's like, this will never happen. But reality keeps stepping in. But anyway, yeah, like that sense of getting away with something is like I hadn't felt that since the first book. And but I also think because I was just like skipping class to write it and stuff. So yeah.
And it's good to, I think a lot of writers, myself being one of them, and I don't know about you, but at a certain point in your career, you kind of start to feel like you're in maybe a slump in a way, and then you find something like, and I can sense that in the pages when I'm reading. It's like, man, I know you were having a lot of fun writing this. And the other books, I mean, and they were historical novels.
Yeah.
And that's something else I want to talk about if we have time, the connection, because they're all connected.
Yeah.
I think you had planned, I don't know.
It went from 6 to 7, and now it's like 2 different sets, is what I would say. So I read a sequence of novels that are set in the past, and we're working their way up to the present. So going from the first one's Blood of Heaven, that's about the early West Florida rebellions and the Florida parishes. And so that's early 19th century. The next novel, SECESSIA, is 1 year in the Civil War in New Orleans. That's a Gothic novel, so it's very much written in that tradition, to embrace that tradition, like to be like what a novel like The Mysteries of Paris, or even better one that I encourage anyone to check out. It's called The Mysteries of New Orleans. It was written by a German writer in the 1850s. It's so good. But anyway, this was a genre of novels at the time. These kind of city-spanning, dark Gothic books. And so I wanted to do that in the same way that the first novel was a picaresque. It's kind of following one character on their sort of peripatetic adventures. And then the third book, The New Inheritors, is a modernist novel. So it's set in the 20s, and I wanted it to be a 20s book. And that's my chance to write a Faulkner, Wolfe, Hemingway style novel and use that prose style, or what I at least identified as it. And so I have I know where I'm going to go next in that sequence, but tonally this is so different. Yeah. And then the idea for the production of it is like, no, we want it to be a paperback. We want it to have just embracing that tradition of like, this is literature for people, like for you to be able to actually spend the money on. Not, $16.99 is considerable, but $30 is a lot more. But then just for purposes of design and everything else. But now, thinking about this continuing in a sequence, and then the other one continuing too, like I can't stop. I have like congenital novel sequence syndrome. Like I keep going, and until someone says, and it's over, like I'm probably gonna continue.
Well, it's interesting because obviously Faulkner did that, and he had the Snopes trilogy, and then you would see characters from previous appear, and you don't even necessarily have to read them all in any kind of order. And I feel the same way about yours too, because you give enough, like in this, where even if I hadn't read the previous ones, you give us the background of the little sax and enough so that the reader's not completely confused by who are these people, because you give enough of that background here. I thought that worked really well.
They're all supposed to stand on their own. They read out in any order possible, read one. And again, like it's the idea of if someone likes Gothic novels, they're probably going to dig the second book. If somebody likes Westerns and cyberpunk are probably going to dig this book. And those two sides might not overlap, but if one person reads the Gothic novel and goes like, well, I do kind of like this writer, I kind of like the idea of introducing readers to something they might not have picked up before. But yeah, I think the other big thing with this book that felt fun is it's in first person, and I hadn't written it from the point of view of this kid, Raleigh, who's 13, when the story opens, and I hadn't written in first person for 10 years. I'd been doing different kinds of third person and going back. I'd kind of been scared of it, which is a very precious thing to say in a world where there's actual scary things. But nevertheless, I was like reluctant to use it over and over again, and then had written the big 500-page version of this in third. And I think that too, of being like, nah, I'm gonna let this kid tell it, like, and hear his voice. That made a big difference.
It does, and it makes it feel more intimate, I think, for the reader, because it's, we have Raleigh's voice, and it's very relatable, and especially for someone who has driven up and down at I-10 and Slidell and St. Tammany and all this, in Pensacola. Like I've been to all those places, so and so in a sense, as cliche as this might sound, I mean the setting and the place is a character just as much as the actual people in your story. I mean, if it were set in Norfolk, Virginia, it wouldn't be the same.
It would not be the same at all. And that's the other thing in terms of cramming stuff in from Mandeville. That's where Raleigh starts the novel in Mandeville, and then it's kind of discovering his heritage, and goes from there to Pensacola and Santa Rosa. And from that entire stretch, I'm listing and cataloging things from different times and different places, from Tiffany Lane's bowling alley to Big Kahuna in Florida. Like, it's, again, like everything I could possibly put in there that was mine or felt like mine and distinct. And that's been the cool thing. Like, people from the Gulf Coast who read the book are like, holy shit, I can't believe you put in that arcade or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, of course I did. I want to keep it.
And even people, for any writers out there, I teach also, and I find that a lot of younger students are reluctant to incorporate those things into their work because nobody else might know what it is. Like they might not be familiar with Slidell or I don't know if the subdivision where it opens is Beauchamp.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Beauchamp.
I don't think you mentioned Beauchamp.
No, I didn't drop Beauchamp. I didn't want to do that.
I was picturing, it's the golf course and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, and so the place itself is character to me, and I read it that way, and I thought, this is the way you're supposed to do it, and it doesn't matter if people know those places.
If you believe, so much of this book, and all my books are about the place, about the Gulf Coast, or at least my stretch, the Gulf Coast from here to Pensacola. And, for the purposes of this book, though, these characters are believing deeply in different ideas of what this place is and can be. I felt like, as I was writing it, the stronger that they believe it, the more real it becomes to the reader. And if I'm talking about check-in, check-out po-boys or whatever in Slidell, and I'm deeply loving it and believing it and writing it richly, then someone's gonna get it. No matter how esoteric or me specific the thing is, it's gonna translate. But then there might be that one person who has seen it and they're gonna knock over the glass. They're so excited, I hope.
Yeah, people love that. It's almost like using a person that as a character. I mean, it's like the panel I was moderating earlier, we were talking about, because they were both set. One was in Baton Rouge, one was in New Orleans, and we were talking about, in one of my favorite quotes, Eudora Welty said, one place understood helps us understand all places better. And so it's the same thing. And I also shared that anecdote which I was found fascinating, but then it makes sense at the same time, is William Faulkner. He lived in Mississippi, this little bitty town, Mississippi, and he has this huge following in Japan. Yeah. And it's like, but because what he was writing about universal things. It didn't matter that it was in Oxford or Yakima County or whatever. People can still relate to these themes of love or longing or jealousy or rage or poverty or whatever it is. And so it did make total sense, like why he would have a huge readership in the other side of the planet, and they get it.
Yeah. No, I feel like that's the thing. If you're invested in it as a writer, and your characters are from it, they're living on the page as much as you can possibly make them, and you're bringing as much. I don't know. That's my whole life. When I teach writing, like it's all about excitement. It's like, how excited are you? How excited are you about what you're reading? How excited are you about what you're writing? I don't know. A lot of times we identify ourselves based on what we don't like, and that's a real drag. And it definitely doesn't win anybody else over. But if you come into something hyped and telling people how much you like this thing or excited about this thing, then they might see the appeal. But yeah.
Yeah, and this might be, and it kind of related to that, and I'm not sure if it's attributed to Robert Frost, but I don't know if he really said it or not, but he said, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader, meaning, like if the writer's not feeling anything when they're composing, it's going to translate to the reader. They're not going to feel anything either. And so the same sort of thing, if you're writing and you're excited about what you're doing, it translates when the reader picks it up. They're excited about reading because it's just like this. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but it's sort of like you communicating telepathically or whatever through your work.
We're setting up. We use all these little weird symbols arranged on a page to convey an emotional experience between two people who we're probably never going to meet, and that's the magic of it. But yeah, writing this, I felt like I was trying hard for that. Whether it's freaking people out, because I wanted to freak myself out. Like I enjoy being freaked out on the page, but in the safe environment of fiction, or whether I'm trying to break your heart, and so sometimes those kind of go hand in hand. Yeah. But no, it's been a fun thing. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that reminds me too, because one of the things I was thinking of. I mean, it's an incredibly violent novel, and that's not criticism at all. And I couldn't help but make the comparison. I think someone who wrote a blurb on the back even mentioned Tarantino or Kill Bill or something, and so you have that. But I think Tarantino sort of parodied himself, with the violence, and so especially in Kill Bill, and then
it's stylized.
Yeah, and
it's a big difference between realistically depicted violence and stylized violence.
Yeah. And it's not gratuitous.
Wow. Or if it's gratuitous, then it's to be fun.
Yeah,
if I want to see a font of blood explode, then I want to put that special effect in. Because I am the kind of person who thinks within the realm of fiction that looks pretty. I like to paint those colors. I like to see that in fiction. I don't like to see it in life. And writing the fiction is a way of dealing with the fact that it happens in life. But if I exaggerate it in fiction and I push it to an extreme, then it becomes less scary, at least to me.
Yeah, it's sort of like exercising those sort of demons in the real world, and just getting them out on the page, and then they don't go away in real life, but it's a way to sort of grapple with those things.
Yeah, it's like the Stephen King quote where it's like, if I write a monster getting a kid, then maybe the monster won't get my kid.
Yeah, so it comes from that kind of fear.
Yeah. Where are we at?
We're good on time. Yeah, we have 30 minutes. So
good God.
We can still,
that's great.
We can still talk, and then we can open it up. Hopefully, y'all have some questions for us.
Oh yeah, let's keep going. Sorry, I was worried.
But yeah, I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit because as a fellow academic who feels the pressures of that life, where a lot of times, and this is, I think, I don't know when this started happening, maybe early 2000s, where administrators at universities look at things differently. Like, you're a writer, great. We want you to publish your books because it's going to, help you out and help us out. but we also want you to be on like 52 committees and do all these things and do all this stuff. And then there's little time to write.
Yeah.
And so you've been pretty prolific. And so I wanted to ask you that because, I mean, you're directing the MFA program as, where you are. And so that's a big responsibility. And so, and people have asked me this all the time too. You have a kid.
Yeah.
And, you know, so how do you balance those things out and make time for the work? And I know the guilt is going to be there regardless because it's you have a beautiful little kid who's young and you want to spend as much time as possible with them, and then, but you also have to get the work done, and then you also have to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So
No, and
how do you kind of balance that out? I mean, do you have a strict routine or?
I used to have strict routines. And it's weird to me, like, or at least for me, the routine and like I'm a repetition person in like personal life. Like if I could do a lot of the same things repeatedly over and over again, I would be really happy. But that's not how life works unless you're very, very fortunate indeed, and you can put this structure around the world and the world will bend around it. But you know, when for the third book for New Inheritors, when my daughter was a baby, I kind of had to learn and figure out that, like, no, I can't have this is my special X amount of hours that are quiet with my special tools and paper, and I'm at work and I have like little pens and stuff that I like to use. And it's like, no, I need to be able to write whenever, like when I'm holding the baby and the baby's strapping me, like I'm making notes or I'm doing stuff like that. But then going into like a serious or more serious academic job and then kind of taking on that responsibility, I don't know, there's a mix of like, you get so much energy seeing young writers working and like their questions and reading their work, and that helped. And then I don't know, I think I was like a cautionary tale because for a couple of years they would see the stacks of the drafts of the 500-page version, you know, sitting there and be like, wow, Professor Wascom, what are you working on? It's like, don't worry, you're gonna find out. And then they're like, how the hell is it this short? It's like, we cut a lot. But anyway, you know, in terms of a balance, for me, trying to carve out the time when it's just my time, where it's not anybody else's. So that's like getting up super early and getting it in as when I can. I'm not a nighttime writer. My brain shuts down at about 4 p.m. Like we're getting very close to it. I'm going to become progressively less articulate. But, you know, so I just like literally can't do it, or it's just total garbage. I'm exhausted. It doesn't work. But if I, you know, wake up at 3 or 4, then yeah, I'm able to do for a little bit. And for this, there's I went from being an everyday, dogged, repetition writer to being like a more project-to-project writer. Where it's like, okay, this novel is what I'm working on, and until it's done, I'm writing every day. And then the next thing is gonna come, and I'm gonna do whatever. But I don't know, for how much the schools and everything else ask of your time, it's bananas. But I do feel like really fortunate because what I get to do is like play with books all day, and people who are excited about books. So it doesn't feel like as much of a drag as when I was like doing things that were not writing related and like those kind of jobs. But I know for some people that works better because it's like you're not thinking about it. Yeah. You can just like zone out. But the one I always go back to, like this, I don't know if the letter ever got mailed, but Gregory Hemingway wrote this letter to his dad, to Ernest. And in the letter he said, were the books worth being a shit father? Were the great books worth being a shit father? And I read that before my kid was born, and I was like, well, and I know the situation, at least for me, like it's not. That doesn't mean I'm not putting in a great deal of devotion into my work, but there's a level of separation from your like present life that a total devotion to the book requires. But I don't know if the book even really requires that kind of thing. I don't know, but I keep that in the back of my head. Like I think about that all the time. It's like even as I'm doing the thing, it's like this is, if she woke up and walked over, like this is not worth that. This is not worth me turning away from that because I'm not going to get too maudlin and grim, but that's how I don't know. I feel in the balance. It's like I want to make sure that my life and my family are the thing that I'm proudest of, and then and then I feel really fortunate. Like I was able to be a crazy young person writing 16 hours a day when I had no responsibilities, and like I wrote 3 novels that way. And it was wonderful. But it's a different deal as a grown up.
Yeah, and then another way to sort of spin that too. I mean, at least I've done this just to kind of assuage any guilt that I have. Is like, well, at the end of the day, I'm doing this for my family.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, I had successes, and it's helped me in a lot of ways, and helped pay those bills, and helped, like my kids when they were younger, they would come here with me every year, and they still remember that very fondly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, anytime I feel guilty about spending time being in front of the computer or whatever, I think, well, I'm doing this for them.
Yeah.
Not for my ego, not for me, not to sell 1 million books or whatever, but like, I'm doing this for it. And also kind of teaching them too, like, about being disciplined and about, and that's what it takes to be an artist of any kind, is discipline. And then people hear that, like, I mean, I wake up at 4 a.m., and people are, what? Like, oh yeah, that is what it takes, I mean, because if you want to do it, you have to carve out that time, and it's not always the most pleasant thing to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark outside, but I mean, I'm the same way. As I get the majority of my work done at that time.
Yeah. And I guess the other one, to piggyback on that realization was like, also it took me, one of the things that assuaged my guilt was realizing that I'm a much worse person if I'm not writing. That I am more annoying, I am grumpier, I am worried about more things. But if I'm got that tempered, whatever percentage of my brain is focusing, whether I'm actually physically writing, I'm still thinking about it and cycling through it. I think that distracts the asshole portion and keeps it occupied, so I don't do anything too lousy. So that's been nice.
Yeah, and it reminds me, there's a great documentary, The Rough South of Larry Brown. There were a series of those. One was Harry Cruz, Larry Brown, and they interviewed his wife. And so Larry Brown, if y'all don't know who he was he was from Mississippi. He was a firefighter. He worked in the Sears factory, I don't know what he did there, but he was a blue collar guy. Never went to college, didn't finish high school, and one day he decided, I want to be a writer. And so he asked his wife if he could borrow his wife's sister's typewriter, and she's like, "Oh, this is nuts," So he just went in there and started writing these books. And no training, and his only training was just reading a lot. He went to the Ole Miss library and started reading Raymond Carver and all these people, and totally self-taught. And in the interview, they were talking to his wife at one point, and she said, "Oh, I love when Larry is in his office." He called it the cool pad. He turned his garage into a little office. And she said, "Because when he's not writing, he is the most depressed person. You don't even want to be around him." And so she was happy that because, and you're right, and there is a sense of guilt, I think. When you're an artist, you feel like you have to do this, and if you don't, things just get kind of off.
And once you're in the rhythm of a story, and I'm sitting here rubbing my hands together, I'm entertaining myself the whole time, and then it's wonderful. It's I want to stay in that spot.
Yeah, it's like it's a high, especially when it's going really well.
Exactly.
And then it can make you, you're a nicer dad, you're a nicer husband, a nicer teacher. And so, it is, and that's sort of the positive spin on it. It's hard work. But when it's going well, it does make you a better human being, I think, or it can. Hemingway, I guess.
Gregory had a lot of. There's plenty of issues he had with.
And unfortunately, so many of the great writers, Faulkner. There's that quote from him where he said, "Nobody remembers Shakespeare's daughter." When his daughter asked after, I don't know.
It was I believe it was at UVA, and he was doing a writing residence thing at the University of Virginia, and his daughter was there, and he didn't introduce her to someone, I think, or didn't mention her in the speech, and apparently really happened. He looked at her that nobody remembers Shakespeare's daughter. I said, holy shit. But that's another kind of human.
And he also said, he was, I guess, so dedicated to his art that I mean, he said, like any beautiful line of poetry is worth,
1,000 grandmothers.
Yeah. Like
brutal. That's
right. I know. I remember it said the Paris Review, which, by the way, if anybody's looking for, I tell my students, because when I was a student, I devoured. I would, get the collected letters of Faulkner, the collected letters of, their correspondence, and that was such a. I mean, that felt like getting a graduate degree in writing, just by reading those. And students don't read that kind of stuff that much anymore, but reading interviews with writers has been, because you learn so much about what their process is, but also how they balance those things.
And then it makes you feel like, or I don't know, for me, the writer interview thing, this is what I do, tell the students all the time, they're getting hooked into it, or at least I hope so. But it makes you feel like less free.
Yeah.
Where especially, I love hearing about the minutia of the process.
Yeah.
And people make fun of these questions, like, I want to know if you use a pen or a keyboard. I want to know what kind of paper you use. I want to know what your notebook looks like. It's awesome. I wish there was a museum of it. But, then when I read that Murakami does this, that, and the other, or Larry Brown did this, that, and the other, it makes me feel like, okay, someone else does it. Someone else is weird too. This is good.
Yeah, and I think as artists, I mean, I don't know what that is, if it's a sort of just like a obsessive compulsive kind of thing where you do have to, it's like, I have to, or in that movie Wonder Boys, he always had to wear the robe, to write. And those things, whether it's superstitious or not, I mean, it works.
You gotta change, I mean, whatever it is to get, I mean, what I say, like, whatever gets you hyped to go to the page.
Yeah.
Like, I have my little talismans and stuff, and then you have to learn what to do when that's not there, right? Yeah. But it's all, I mean, if all of this wasn't fun, then what on earth is the point?
And sometimes, to be totally honest, it's not. I mean, it is work.
Yeah,
it is work,
labor.
and but still you do it because you feel like you have to, and for the one person that might read it and connect with it, and I mean, because I remember reading books when I was younger that I just felt like it was speaking directly to me, and I always think, I'm sort of trying to pay that back, pay it forward, like maybe there's somebody out there who might read something I wrote and it resonates in some way, and then they want to do this. So maybe that the moral of that story is just like, writing is also a community. I mean, you have to interact with other writers, and you have to. I mean, not all. I mean, there's like J.D. Salinger and all the notorious Cormac, McCarthy, and the people who didn't do that. But
he hung out with people though.
He did.
He's a big fibber. Well, he was a big fibber.
But and the thing with him too is he started off as being known as being a recluse. And then when he started, like when he was on Oprah's book club and so now he's a sellout.
Right.
So to me, it's kind of like you kind of have to balance it out from the beginning because, I don't know. I mean, I get being shy. I mean, I'm not like the most gregarious person in the world, but I also realize that is part of the job. It's a job, it's a profession.
Right.
And part of that profession is coming to things like this and speaking to other writers. And,
expecting people, it's one of my teachers, he was like, if you expect people to take time away from their families, their work, and all of the mountains of entertainment that is more engaging and easier to digest than a book, then you better bring something to the table, and you better want to be there too. Like, and especially whether it's an event or like just the writing itself. Like, if you're not dancing in, I don't know what the point is. Is there someone else ready to take that spot?
Yeah. 1 minute? Oh, okay. So I thought we had a little bit more time. Sorry about that. Does anybody have like a 30-second question?
I'll stand out there in the hall with you and answer it too.
Yeah, we're happy to talk after this too. What's that? And
I'll walk my way over and talk to you.
But does anybody have a 30-second question that we can answer in 30 seconds?
Yes.
West Florida, why is that such a powerful?
Oh, perfect. I'm going to speed run it. Because that's where I'm from. I was born in New Orleans, first 5 years in Slidell, and then moved to Pensacola. And when I was in Pensacola, I grew up and became a teenager, and like many teenagers, became an asshole. And in order to like make myself the most identifiable asshole possible, I made it my identity that I'm from Louisiana and I hate Florida. I despise it. this is terrible, this is silly, beaches, smeeches, I want to crawfish. And then I moved back to Louisiana. I made my pilgrimage home. We were going home basically every weekend to visit family, but regardless, didn't live there. Moved to Louisiana, went to LSU, whereupon I was immediately instructed, son, you're from Florida. And then I went, shit. And went to the library at LSU and discovered a book by Stanley Crisby Arthur called The Story of the West Florida Rebellion. And I started to look around and see, they had just started putting the signs, the West Florida Republic Parkway signs. And I'd always heard West Florida in Pensacola. It's a University of West Florida, tons of things are named it. But when I started seeing it here, and then thinking about there, and this whole thing I've been doing, pulling myself back and forth. I literally went back to Florida to grad school, to Tallahassee. I realized that now I know where I'm from. Like, I'm from West Florida. And it's the best kind of place to be from as a writer because it's a place that doesn't exist. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you all so much.